They laughed at the black janitor in front of a $200,000 car, not knowing the only signature that mattered in that building belonged to the man holding the mop. Isaiah Brooks stood in the center of the marble lobby with a gray work shirt, faded janitor badge, and a yellow cleaning cart beside him, quietly wiping rainwater from the floor near the glass entrance of Vail Premier Motors. Outside, downtown Baltimore moved under a cold morning drizzle, but inside the showroom everything shined: polished chrome, black leather seats, glass walls, and luxury cars sitting under lights bright enough to make every hood look like a mirror. Isaiah moved slowly, carefully, the way a man worked when he cared about a place even if nobody cared to learn his name. Then Preston Vail walked in with two wealthy clients, one hand adjusting his silver watch, the other pointing toward a midnight blue coupe behind velvet ropes. Preston stopped the moment he saw Isaiah. His smile disappeared, not from concern, but from embarrassment, as if a working man had ruined the air. "Are you serious?" Preston said loud enough for the receptionist to look up. "Who let the cleaning help stand this close to my clients?" Isaiah kept his eyes on the floor and guided the mop through a thin line of water. "Just making sure nobody slips, sir." That calm answer made Preston's jaw tighten. He stepped closer, his expensive shoes clicking across the marble. "This is a luxury dealership, not a bus station. When people walk in here, they want class. They do not want to see you dragging a mop beside a car they might buy." The clients shifted uncomfortably. The receptionist, Clara, lowered her eyes. Daniel, the security supervisor near the front desk, watched without moving, but his hand hovered near the camera monitor. Isaiah said nothing. His silence was not weakness. Preston mistook it for permission. He picked up the paper cup of coffee from the counter, tilted it over the clean floor, and let a dark splash spread across the white marble inches from Isaiah's shoes. "There," Preston said, smiling now. "Since you want to be useful, clean that before someone important sees it." A few salesmen froze. One customer quietly lifted a phone. Above them, the tiny red light of the lobby camera blinked once, then again, recording every word. Isaiah looked at the coffee, then at Preston, and for one brief second, something colder than anger passed through his eyes. Not rage. Not fear. Recognition. Like he had just confirmed exactly what kind of man was standing in the building he was about to buy. Preston leaned in and lowered his voice, but not enough. "And when you are done, use the service hallway. People like you do not belong in the front of a place like this." Isaiah slowly placed both hands on the mop handle. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply looked toward the glass conference room at the far end of the lobby, where a closing table had already been prepared, where attorneys would arrive before sunset, where the documents transferring ownership of the entire building waited for his name. Then he glanced at his watch. 10:42 in the morning. The deal was scheduled for 3. Preston thought he had embarrassed a janitor. What he had really done was put himself on camera insulting the new owner before the ink was even dry. By the time the coffee touched the marble, Isaiah Brooks had already been inside the building for nearly 4 hours, long before Preston Vail arrived with his polished shoes and polished insults. Isaiah had entered through the employee door at 6:15 that morning, while the sky over Baltimore was still dark blue and the streets smelled like rain, brake dust, and bakery bread from the corner shop 2 blocks away. He wore the same gray work shirt, the same navy pants, the same scuffed black shoes, and the same faded cap pulled low over his forehead. Nothing about him announced money. Nothing about him asked for attention. He carried a lunch bag in one hand and pushed the cleaning cart with the other, moving through the service hallway with the quiet rhythm of a man who had learned long ago that people revealed themselves most honestly when they thought the person nearby did not matter. At the security desk, Daniel Price looked up from the monitor and straightened a little. Daniel was a broad-shouldered black man in his mid-40s, neat uniform, careful eyes, and the tired patience of someone who had watched too much bad behavior go unreported. "Morning, Mr." Daniel stopped himself, then corrected his tone. "Morning, Isaiah." Isaiah gave him a small smile. "Morning, Daniel. How is your knee holding up?" Daniel glanced down, surprised as he always was that Isaiah remembered details other people ignored. "Better. My daughter made me wear the brace." "Smart daughter," Isaiah said. His voice was low, warm, and steady. He looked at the camera wall behind Daniel, where 12 angles showed the lobby, showroom, parking entrance, loading dock, elevators, and hallway outside the conference room. One screen flickered for half a second before returning to normal. Isaiah noticed it immediately. He did not point like a man trying to command the room. He simply nodded toward it. "Camera 7 still dropping frames?" Daniel lowered his voice. "Only when the showroom Wi-Fi spikes. I logged it twice. Building manager has not approved replacement yet." Isaiah looked at the monitor a moment longer, then said, "Keep every camera running today. Save everything from opening to closing." Daniel did not ask why. There were questions a man asked when he wanted gossip, and questions he saved for when the truth was ready. "Yes, sir," he said, quietly enough that the word did not travel. Isaiah moved on before anyone could hear it. In the lobby, Clara Jensen was arranging visitor badges behind the front desk, her blonde hair tied back, her face already carrying the nervous look she wore whenever the dealership staff was scheduled for a VIP delivery. Isaiah stopped at the edge of the marble, not too close, never forcing anyone into conversation. "Good morning, Clara." She looked up and softened. "Good morning. You are early." "Rain came early too," Isaiah said, pointing gently toward the entrance where a thin trail of water had started to form. "Someone is going to step in that and blame the floor." Clara almost laughed, then caught herself. "That sounds about right." Isaiah took a folded towel from the cart and laid it near the glass door before the first customer ever arrived. He did not have to do that. The cleaning crew assigned to the building was not technically his job, and the uniform he wore that day was part of an arrangement made through a temporary staffing company that owed a favor to a property attorney. But Isaiah had asked for it this way. He wanted to see the building from the angle no investor report could show him. He wanted to know how tenants treated people who carried keys but not titles, people who emptied trash after the suits went home, people whose names disappeared from holiday cards even though their hands kept the place alive. He had bought buildings before. Office towers in Richmond, mixed-use properties in Philadelphia, 2 medical centers outside Atlanta, and an old warehouse in Baltimore that he had turned into affordable small business space. But this one was different. This building was where he had once stood as a 19-year-old porter, wiping tire marks from a showroom floor while salesmen called him "boy" without learning his name. That dealership was gone now, replaced by Vail Premier Motors and its glass walls, imported leather chairs, and quiet cruelty wrapped in cologne. Isaiah never forgot the weight of that first mop handle. He never forgot promising himself that if he ever owned a door like this, nobody would be made to feel small for walking through it. By 7:30, he had already checked the service elevator, the basement hallway, the loading dock, and the mechanical room where an old pipe had left a faint mineral stain near the wall. He photographed it with his phone, not like a janitor documenting a complaint, but like a buyer calculating deferred maintenance. He noted the loose hinge on the supply closet, the burned-out bulb near the south stairwell, the blind spot between the elevator vestibule and the showroom entrance. He knew the rent roll. He knew the inspection report. He knew the parking revenue, the tenant disputes, the upcoming roof work, and the exact square footage Preston Vale liked to brag about as if the showroom had built itself. Still, he bent down and picked up a gum wrapper near the elevator because leaving trash on the floor did not make him richer, and picking it up did not make him less powerful. At 8:10, he stood near the front windows as the first employees of Vail Premier Motors arrived. Some nodded at him. Some walked past without seeing him at all. One young salesman held the door open and said, "Appreciate you, sir," and Isaiah remembered his face. Another saleswoman moved a wet floor sign 2 feet to the left so nobody would trip, and Isaiah remembered her too. He was not looking for perfection. He was looking for truth. A place could have problems and still deserve saving. What mattered was whether people corrected themselves when nobody important was watching. At 9, his phone vibrated inside his pocket. He moved into the service hallway before answering. "Morning, Maya." His daughter's voice came through clean and alert, the voice of a real estate attorney who had inherited her father's patience but not his tolerance for nonsense. "Dad," Eleanor confirmed the seller's side. "Closing table at 3 o'clock. Escrow is funded. Title is clear. Once you sign, the building is yours." Isaiah looked through the small hallway window toward the showroom, where a black sedan gleamed under white lights. "Good. You still insist on doing the undercover janitor thing?" "It is not a thing," Isaiah said. "It is an inspection." Maya sighed, but there was affection under it. "A normal inspection involves a clipboard. A clipboard tells me what the roof needs. A mop tells me what the culture is." For a moment, Maya was quiet. She knew that tone. She had heard it when her father bought the warehouse and refused to evict the barber who was 3 months behind because the man had been caring for his wife. She had heard it when he fired a property manager for calling maintenance workers disposable. Isaiah did not raise his voice when something mattered. He got quieter. "Has anybody recognized you?" she asked. "Daniel knows enough to be careful. Clara does not. Preston has not arrived. Preston Vale is the one with the complaints. Most of them seem to bend in his direction. Then please do not let him push you into something." Isaiah gave a soft breath that was almost a laugh. "Your father is 58 years old. I am not. Getting pushed anywhere by a man who thinks a leased showroom is a kingdom. That is exactly the sentence that makes me nervous. I will see you at 3. Dad." "Yes. Remember, you do not have to prove your dignity to anybody in that building." Isaiah looked down at his work shirt, at the faint bleach mark on the sleeve, at hands that had signed 8-figure deals and still knew how to wring out a mop. "I know," he said. "But I may need them to prove theirs." He ended the call and returned to the lobby before anyone noticed he was gone. Around him, the building warmed into business. Elevators opened. Phones rang. Customers arrived under umbrellas. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the showroom lounge. Isaiah wiped fingerprints from the lower glass panel by the entrance, then paused as Preston Vale's name appeared on the receptionist's screen for a 10:30 VIP appointment. Clara saw it too, and the small change in her posture told Isaiah more than any complaint file. Her shoulders tightened. Daniel's eyes moved toward the camera monitors. A junior salesman straightened his tie too quickly. The air changed before Preston even walked in. Isaiah did not move away from it. He rolled his cart to the side, checked the wet floor sign, and stood where he could see the entrance, the lobby camera, the showroom floor, the conference room, and the faces of the people who thought the day belonged to them. He was not there to cause trouble. He was not there to perform humility. He was there to learn whether the building he was about to buy had been polished on the surface and rotting underneath. When the front doors opened and Preston Vale stepped inside with his clients, Isaiah lowered his eyes to the marble and continued working. His calm was not fear. It was discipline. And every quiet step he had taken that morning had led him to the exact moment when Preston would mistake the man cleaning the floor for a man with no power over it. Preston Vale had built his little kingdom on glass, chrome, and fear, and by the time he crossed the showroom floor that morning, everyone inside Vale Premier Motors already knew how to move around his ego. He was 42 years old, white, sharply dressed, and careful about every visible detail except the way he treated people. His suits were tailored within half an inch of perfection. His shoes were polished until the ceiling lights ran across them like water. His watch cost more than some employees made in 3 months, and he made sure his sleeve rose just enough for customers to notice it when he shook their hands. Preston understood luxury branding, but he understood human pressure even better. He knew when to smile, when to flatter, when to make a rich customer feel rare, and when to make an employee feel replaceable. That was how he survived. That was how he rose from salesman to senior sales director. Not by being the most talented man in the building, but by making everyone believe crossing him would cost more than silence. The showroom was on the ground floor of the building, wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass and filled with cars that looked less like transportation and more like trophies. Preston liked to call it his floor, his brand, his clientele, his atmosphere. He said it so often that younger salespeople started repeating it, even though the dealership did not own a single brick of the building. They leased the space. They paid rent. They followed building rules, at least on paper. But Preston treated the lobby like his personal stage and everyone outside his sales team like background noise. Security was useful when it opened doors for clients and invisible when it asked him to follow access policy. Reception was charming when it smiled at his guests and incompetent when it forwarded complaints. Cleaning staff were tolerated before sunrise, but once the first customer arrived, Preston wanted them gone, as if luxury could only exist after labor disappeared. He had learned that the wealthy sometimes forgave arrogance if it came dressed well enough. He had also learned that workers often swallowed disrespect because rent, health insurance, and a steady schedule mattered more than pride in a single moment. Preston used that calculation like a weapon, not loudly at first, but with little cuts that rarely left proof. A raised eyebrow when a janitor entered through the main lobby. A joke about fingerprints on glass after a maintenance worker walked by. An email to the building manager calling the cleaning crew visual clutter during premium appointments. A complaint that Daniel Price's security team looked too heavy at the desk, when what he really meant was that Daniel did not bow quickly enough. Preston never used words he could not deny in writing. He preferred phrases like brand alignment, client comfort, front-facing standards, and experience quality. They sounded professional. They also made it easy to hide cruelty inside policy. Over time, people learned the pattern. Clara Jensen learned not to send maintenance through the lobby after 10 in the morning unless she wanted Preston standing at her desk with a tight smile and a voice low enough to be private but sharp enough to sting. Daniel learned to save incident notes even when the building manager dismissed them as personality conflicts. The cleaning crew learned to finish early, take the freight elevator, and avoid looking through the glass at cars they were not supposed to admire. Tenants learned Preston could be charming if he thought they had money and dismissive if he thought they did not. Mr. Howard Bell, a retired postal supervisor who rented a small consulting office on the 4th floor, had once been stopped near the showroom rope line because Preston assumed he was wandering in from the street. When Mr. Bell explained that he had an office upstairs, Preston laughed lightly and said, "Then you know the elevators are that way." The words were polite enough to survive a complaint, but the tone stayed with Mr. Bell for months. Preston won because his behavior was difficult to hold in one hand. One comment here. One humiliation there. One employee afraid of retaliation. One camera angle with no sound. One building manager too tired to challenge a tenant that paid premium rent. Every small escape taught him he was untouchable. That morning, before his 10:30 clients arrived, Preston stood in his private glass office overlooking the showroom and reviewed his appointments on a tablet. A luxury SUV delivery at noon. A coupe test drive at 1:15. A potential corporate fleet buyer later in the week. And above all of it, the rumor that the building sale would close that afternoon. That rumor irritated him more than he admitted. He had spent 6 years turning the showroom into a place people in Baltimore recognized, and he believed that gave him leverage over whoever bought the property. In his mind, any new owner would need him. Any new owner would want the prestige of a dealership under bright lights and imported tile. Any new owner would understand that Preston Vale brought image, and image brought money. The problem was that complaints had been increasing. A cleaning supervisor had requested written boundaries after Preston demanded that her team use the loading dock during business hours even when moving supplies through rain. A courier had reported being told to wait outside because his uniform looked off-brand. Clara had forwarded 2 concerns from visitors who felt uncomfortable with how Preston spoke to staff. Daniel had logged 3 incidents involving Preston interfering with security procedures. Victor Lang, the current building manager, had warned Preston to be more careful until the sale closed. Preston did not hear that as a moral correction. He heard it as bad timing. Just keep the lobby clean and quiet, Preston told Victor over the phone that morning, standing beside a silver sedan with one hand in his pocket. Whoever this buyer is, they need to see premium energy. I do not want carts, tools, delivery people, or cleaning uniforms drifting through the front when my clients are here. Victor sounded tired. Preston, it is still a functioning building. People work there. Then they can work out of sight, Preston said. That is the whole point of front-of-house standards. The new owner may not see it that way. Preston smirked at his reflection in the car window. The new owner will see rent checks. And mine clear. He ended the call before Victor could answer. It was one of Preston's favorite tricks, leave a conversation before anyone could make him responsible for listening. Across the showroom, a young salesman named Eric adjusted the rope line around the midnight blue coupe. Preston noticed a small streak on the glass display stand and snapped his fingers. Eric. Fix that. Details sell cars. Eric wiped it immediately. Yes, Preston. Not yes, Preston. Yes, Mr. Vale when clients are in the building. Eric nodded, embarrassed. Preston liked that. Not because Eric had done anything wrong, but because embarrassment reminded people of rank. Rank was Preston's favorite language. He spoke it with parking spots, office glass, commission charts, guest lists, and the way he could turn a room cold without raising his voice. When Clara called from reception to tell him his VIP clients were 5 minutes away, he stepped into the lobby and scanned the space like an actor inspecting a stage before curtain. Marble clean. Cars angled perfectly. Coffee fresh. Sales team alert. Security present but not too visible. Then he saw Isaiah Brooks near the entrance with a mop, and something in Preston's face hardened. He did not see a man. He saw interruption. He saw labor where he wanted illusion. He saw dark skin, gray uniform, cleaning cart, and assumed low status in the time it took his expensive shoes to take one step. That assumption did not feel like hate to Preston, it felt like instinct, which made it more dangerous. He had spent years teaching himself that people belonged in categories: buyer, seller, staff, problem, asset, obstacle. The category he placed Isaiah in had no voice, no consequence, and no right to take up space beside a luxury car. What Preston did not know was that Isaiah had already read the building better than any investor Preston imagined. Isaiah had seen the broken camera. He had seen Clara's fear. He had seen Daniel's discipline. He had seen the way the staff braced before Preston entered. But Preston saw only a janitor and a chance to remind everyone who controlled the showroom. As his client stepped through the glass doors behind him, Preston made his choice. He smiled like a man protecting a brand, not realizing he was revealing a pattern. He raised his voice just enough for the room to hear. He turned one working man into a public example because he had done it before and survived every time. That was the truth about Preston. Vale's power. It was not real ownership. It was not real authority. It was permission collected from years of other people looking away. And on that morning, with the cameras running, the attorney on the way, the closing table waiting, and Isaiah Brooks standing quietly on the marble floor, Preston was about to spend that entire false power in front of the one man who could take it away. Preston Vale's first mistake was believing Isaiah Brooks had no place to stand unless Preston allowed it. The lobby had filled by 10:30, not crowded enough to feel busy, but full enough for Humiliation to have an audience. 2 clients stood near the midnight blue coupe, a husband and wife from the suburbs north of Baltimore, dressed in quiet money and looking more interested in the car than in the tension forming beside it. Clara sat behind the reception desk with her fingers still on the keyboard, watching without wanting Preston to notice she was watching. Daniel remained near the security station, close enough to respond if needed, far enough not to give Preston an excuse to accuse him of interfering with a sale. Isaiah pushed his cleaning cart along the edge of the showroom rope line, guiding the mop with slow, neat movements across a patch of rainwater that had tracked in from the glass entrance. He did not cut in front of the clients. He did not speak first. He did not look at the cars with envy or at Preston with fear. He simply worked, because a wet marble floor did not care how much the car beside it cost. Preston saw him anyway. That was the problem. Not the water. Not the safety sign. Not the fact that Isaiah had prevented someone from slipping. The problem, in Preston's eyes, was that a black man in a gray janitor shirt had become visible during a luxury appointment. Preston's smile stayed on for his clients, but his eyes sharpened as he stepped away from them. "Excuse me," he said, not politely, but loudly enough to make the word feel like a warning. Isaiah looked up. "Yes, sir." Preston gestured at the mop as if it were a stain. "What exactly are you doing here?" Isaiah glanced down at the floor, then back at him. "Cleaning water near the entrance. The rain is making the marble slick." "I can see what rain does," Preston said. "What I am asking is why you are doing it here, now, beside a vehicle delivery." Isaiah's hands rested lightly on the mop handle. "Because this is where the water is." A small silence followed. It was not disrespectful. It was not clever. It was only true, and somehow that made it worse for Preston. The wife near the coupe looked toward the floor and then moved one step back from the wet patch, as if realizing Isaiah had been right. Preston noticed that too. His jaw tightened. "There is a service hallway for a reason," he said. "There are back-of-house standards for a reason. We do not create a premium customer experience by having cleaning carts roll through the showroom while people are making major purchase decisions." Isaiah nodded once, the kind of nod a patient man gives when he understands both the words and the weakness behind them. "I will be out of the way in a moment." Preston leaned closer, lowering his voice, but the lobby carried sound across glass and stone. "You should have been out of the way before my clients arrived." Isaiah did not answer immediately. He wrung the mop into the bucket, set the yellow wet floor sign 2 feet closer to the entrance, and checked that the path to the car remained clear. Every movement was controlled. There was no trembling, no anger, no apology for existing. Preston had expected embarrassment. He had expected the quick shuffle of someone eager to disappear. Instead, Isaiah's calm stood in the room like a closed door. Preston glanced toward Daniel. "Security." Daniel turned his head. "Yes, Mr. Vale. Is there a reason building service is wandering around my showroom during client hours?" Daniel's eyes moved from Preston to Isaiah, then to the wet floor, then to the camera above the lobby doors. The floor was wet near the entrance. "He is addressing a safety issue." Preston gave a short laugh. "That is not what I asked." "That is the answer," Daniel said, still professional, still even. The clients heard that. Clara heard it. One junior salesman looked down at his tablet as if numbers had suddenly become fascinating. Isaiah watched Preston. Without staring. He knew this type of man. Not because Preston was unique, but because Preston was common in a particular way. Men like him did not always begin with shouting. They began by measuring who would flinch. When no one flinched, they called it disrespect. Preston turned back to Isaiah. "What is your name?" "Isaiah." "Isaiah what?" "Brooks." Something passed through Daniel's face, almost nothing, but Isaiah noticed it. Preston did not. Preston was too busy searching for a place to press. "Well, Isaiah Brooks, let me explain something. This is a high-end automotive environment. People come here expecting discretion, elegance, and professionalism. They do not expect to see someone mopping around their shoes like they are at a discount grocery store. Isaiah looked at the clients and said calmly, "I apologize for the inconvenience." The husband, uncomfortable now, gave a small nod. "It is fine. Safety first." Preston's smile tightened again. The client had given Isaiah dignity, and Preston treated it like theft. "No, Mr. Caldwell, you should not have to excuse poor coordination. That is the point." Then he looked at Isaiah again. "Where is your supervisor?" "Not in the lobby." "That is convenient. It is accurate." Preston stared at him, waiting for fear to fill the space. It did not. Isaiah's posture remained steady, shoulders relaxed, eyes level, voice mild. He was not performing defiance. He was practicing restraint. And Preston, who had built authority out of other people's discomfort, could not stand a man who refused to give him any. "You have an answer for everything," Preston said. "No," Isaiah replied. "Only for what you asked." Clara's eyes flicked up. Daniel's hand moved once across the security keyboard. The red camera light above the lobby door kept blinking. Preston stepped closer to the cart and looked down into the bucket. "This entire setup is unacceptable. The cart, the mop, the sign, all of it. Move it through the rear hall. Now." Isaiah glanced toward the glass entrance, where another customer had just stepped in shaking rain from an umbrella. Water dotted the marble again. "I can move the cart after I finish drying the entrance." Preston's voice dropped. "I did not ask you to negotiate." Isaiah's eyes shifted to the new water trail, then to the client's polished shoes, then back to Preston. "No, sir. You asked me to leave a wet floor by the front door." The sentence was calm, almost gentle, but it landed hard because everyone in the lobby understood it was true. Preston's face changed. It was quick, but visible, the moment a small man wearing expensive fabric realized the person he was trying to shrink had not bowed. "You think you are clever?" he asked. "No, you think because security is standing there, you can talk back." "I am not talking back." Isaiah placed the mop upright in the bucket and folded the towel over the cart handle. "I am trying to keep your clients from stepping on a slick floor." Preston looked toward the clients, who were now clearly aware that the argument had gone too far. That embarrassed him, and Preston did what men like him often did when embarrassment touched them in public. He searched for someone weaker to carry it. "You know what?" he said, smiling suddenly, though there was nothing warm in it. "Maybe I should be clearer. You are not part of this experience. You are not part of this sale. You are not part of what people come here to see. So when I tell you to use the service hallway, I am not asking for your opinion. I am giving you the easiest instruction you will get today." Isaiah looked at him for a long second. Then he reached for the cart handle. Preston believed he had one. But Isaiah only rolled the cart 3 feet to the side, clearing the walkway while leaving the wet floor sign exactly where it needed to be. "The path is clear," Isaiah said. "The sign stays until the floor is dry." Preston's smile vanished. "Remove it. Someone could slip. Remove it." Isaiah did not move. He did not raise his voice. He did not fold his arms. He only stood beside the sign as if common sense had more authority than Preston's pride. That stillness made Preston feel watched in a way he did not like. His clients were no longer looking at the car. Clara had stopped typing. Daniel was fully turned toward the lobby now. And somewhere behind Preston, near the lounge, a young customer still held a phone low at chest level, recording what looked like a small disagreement but sounded more and more like a man exposing himself. Preston gave a quiet laugh through his nose. "Fine," he said. "If you want to be stubborn, we can handle it properly." He took out his phone and opened his contacts. "I will call building management myself. I will make sure whoever sent you here understands that this showroom does not tolerate attitude from cleaning staff." Isaiah's face did not change. "You should call whoever you think is appropriate." That sentence should have warned Preston. The wrong people panic when threatened. The right people document. But Preston had never learned the difference, because for years, his threats had worked before he had to examine them. He pointed one finger toward the service hallway. When I am done, you will not be assigned to this building again. Isaiah lowered his gaze to Preston's finger, then back to his face. Is that what you want on record? The lobby went still. Preston heard the word record and assumed it was a challenge from a man too poor to make one. He looked up at the camera, then back at Isaiah, and his pride did the rest. Yes, he said clearly. Put it on any record you want. I do not want you in my showroom, near my clients, or standing at the front of this building like you belong here. Isaiah's hand tightened once on the cart handle, not in anger, but in confirmation. Across the lobby, Daniel saved the clip. Clara swallowed and glanced toward the conference room hallway, where preparations for the afternoon closing had already begun. The client said nothing. The rain continued tapping against the glass. Preston thought he had just given an order. Isaiah knew he had just created evidence. Preston did not step away after saying Isaiah did not belong in the front of the building. He stayed there, standing beside the yellow wet floor sign like a man who believed the marble itself should obey him. His clients were still watching. Daniel was still near the security station. Clara was still behind the desk with her hands frozen above the keyboard. The young customer near the lounge still held his phone low, pretending to check a message while the lens faced the lobby. Preston felt the room shifting, and instead of reading that shift as a warning, he treated it like disrespect. He had built his authority on quick embarrassment, and when embarrassment did not break Isaiah, Preston decided to make it heavier. You know what the problem is? Preston said, turning slightly so the clients could hear him again. Standards used to mean something. People used to understand roles. Now everybody thinks wearing a badge and pushing a cart gives them the right to argue in front of buyers. Isaiah remained beside the cart, one hand on the handle, the other resting near a folded towel. I am not arguing with you. No, you are doing something worse, Preston said. You are performing calm, like that makes you professional. Isaiah looked toward the entrance again. Another trail of rainwater had begun to form near the glass. I am doing my job. Preston laughed softly, then looked at his clients with an apologetic smile that was more performance than apology. I am sorry about this. Usually our environment is carefully controlled. The wife, Mrs. Caldwell, looked uncomfortable. It is all right. He was only trying to dry the floor. That should have ended it. A decent man would have accepted the exit. Preston was not looking for an exit. He was looking for surrender. His eyes moved back to Isaiah. Mrs. Caldwell is being polite. Do not mistake that for permission to keep embarrassing this brand. Isaiah's face did not change, but Daniel saw his eyes move once to the lobby camera, then to the customer phone, then to Clara. Isaiah was not absorbing humiliation. He was counting witnesses. Preston reached for the yellow sign and slid it 3 feet to the side with the edge of his shoe. It made a dry scraping sound across the marble. There. Now it is not in the delivery path. Isaiah took one slow step forward and placed the sign back where it had been. The water is still there. Preston stared at the sign, then at Isaiah, with a kind of disbelief that came only from a man used to confusing preference with law. Did you just move that back? Yes. After I told you not to. Yes. The lobby went quiet enough to hear the rain hitting the windows. Isaiah did not say the word with attitude. He said it like a fact. That made Preston angrier than open defiance would have. If Isaiah had shouted, Preston could have called him unstable. If Isaiah had insulted him, Preston could have called security. If Isaiah had trembled, Preston could have dismissed him. But Isaiah only stood there with quiet discipline, and Preston had no clean way to punish dignity. So he dirted the moment instead. He reached to the coffee counter, picked up a full paper cup, and looked directly at Isaiah. Clara's breath caught. Daniel took half a step forward but stopped when Isaiah lifted his hand slightly, not as a command, only as a calm signal that he was all right. Preston smiled. "Since you insist this floor needs attention," he said, "let us make sure you have something worth doing." He tipped the cup. Dark coffee spilled across the white marble in a spreading line, curling around the base of the wet floor sign and running toward Isaiah's shoes. No one spoke. The sound was small, just liquid hitting stone, but it landed in the room like a slap to everyone who had ever been made to clean up after someone else's pride. Preston placed the empty cup on the counter and folded his arms. "Clean it." Isaiah looked down at the coffee. A drop had splashed onto the toe of his shoe. He looked back at Preston. "You spilled that intentionally." Preston widened his eyes with fake innocence. "Careful. Accusing a senior director in front of clients might not be wise for someone in your position." I described what happened. "No," Preston said. "You implied misconduct." He turned toward Daniel. "Security, are you hearing this? He is accusing me now." Daniel's voice stayed even. "The camera will show what happened." The words hit Preston wrong. His eyes snapped toward the camera, then back to Daniel. "Your job is to maintain order, not editorialize. My job includes preserving the safety of this lobby. Then preserve it by removing the disruption." Isaiah bent slowly, took fresh towels from his cart, and began placing them at the edge of the coffee so it would not spread. Toward the walkway. He did not kneel in defeat. He worked with the control of a man preventing a hazard. Preston hated that too. Even in a forced humiliation, Isaiah refused to become small. "No," Preston said sharply. "Not like that." Isaiah paused. "Excuse me. Do it properly. You made such a point about the floor. Get down and clean it properly." Clara looked at Preston now, openly disturbed. "Mr. Vale," Preston cut her off without looking at her. "Clara, do not insert yourself into a facilities issue." Isaiah continued blotting the coffee from a standing crouch, efficient and precise. "The floor will be clean in a moment." I said properly. Preston stepped closer and pointed at the stain. "You wanted everyone to see you working so hard. Go ahead. Show them." The clients were no longer pretending to look at the car. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Maybe we should come back later." Preston's face tightened with panic disguised as charm. "Absolutely not. This will take 30 seconds. He looked down at Isaiah again. "Unless he wants to make it difficult." That was Preston's real fear, not the stain, not the sign, not the mop, but the possibility that Isaiah's calmness would expose who was actually making the room uncomfortable. Isaiah finished placing the towels, then looked toward Daniel. "Please make sure the spill is documented before it is fully cleaned." Preston gave a short, ugly laugh. "Documented? You hear yourself. This is not a federal case. It is coffee. Then documentation should not bother you." For the first time, Preston's face flushed. "You have a mouth on you." Isaiah stood upright. "I have answered every question you asked. And I am telling you that attitude does not belong here." Preston grabbed the radio from the edge of Clara's desk before she could stop him and pressed the side button. "Victor, this is Preston in the lobby. I need building management downstairs immediately. We have a cleaning staff issue interfering with clients." Static answered. Victor Lang's voice came through a moment later, tired and cautious. "What kind of issue?" Preston kept his eyes on Isaiah. "Insubordination, disruption, refusal to follow. Front-of-house direction, and now accusations against dealership leadership." Isaiah listened, expression steady. Every word they said was being recorded. Every word added weight. Victor answered, "Preston, slow down. Who are we talking about?" Preston glanced at Isaiah's faded badge. Isaiah Brooks, janitorial assignment. Gray uniform. He is refusing to use the service corridor and creating a scene. Daniel looked down at the security console and saved another clip. Clara's hand moved quietly to her email. The young customer near the lounge adjusted his phone angle. Preston did not notice. He was too deep inside his own performance. I want him removed from this showroom, Preston continued. And I want whoever supervises him notified that he is not welcome back on dealership property. Victor hesitated through the radio. The lobby is common area, Preston. The dealership does not control all access. Preston's eyes narrowed. He hated being corrected where others could hear it. The showroom experience starts at the front door. Do not split hairs with me. Isaiah placed the soaked towels into a separate bag on his cart, then put fresh absorbent pads around the remaining coffee. His movements were slow enough to look ordinary, precise enough to preserve the scene before it vanished. Preston watched him like the act itself was an insult. Stop touching it, Preston said suddenly. Isaiah looked up. You told me to clean it. I told you to clean it, not stage an investigation. I am preventing the spill from spreading. No. You are trying to make me look bad. Isaiah's voice was almost gentle. You do not need my help with that. A small sound escaped from somewhere near the sales desk, not quite a laugh, quickly swallowed. Preston heard it. His eyes flashed toward the junior salesman. Both looked down immediately. The loss of control was becoming visible, and visible loss of control terrified Preston more than any complaint. He stepped closer to Isaiah, close enough that Daniel moved forward again. Isaiah did not move back. Listen to me carefully, Preston said. I have had people removed from this building for less. I know the owner. I know the manager. I know the dealership group. I know people who can make one call and make sure you are cleaning parking garages across town by tomorrow morning. Isaiah looked at him for a long moment. Do you? Preston blinked. Do I what? Know the owner. The question was quiet. Too quiet. For half a second, it opened a space in the room that Preston should have noticed. Clara noticed. Daniel noticed. Even Mrs. Caldwell looked from Isaiah to Preston as if the sentence had more weight than it should. Preston missed it completely. He smiled again, returning to the safety of arrogance. I know enough to know you are not him. Isaiah lowered his eyes briefly, not to hide fear, but to hide the almost invisible sadness of hearing a man convict himself so easily. That is clear. Preston turned back to the clients, trying to reclaim the atmosphere. Again, I apologize. Some people confuse access with importance. Then, because one humiliation had not satisfied him, he added, that is why standards matter. Without standards, every back hallway becomes the front door. Isaiah resumed cleaning the last line of coffee, but the statement moved through the lobby and settled on everyone who had ever used a back hallway because someone like Preston told them to. Clara's jaw tightened. Daniel's eyes hardened. Mr. Caldwell looked at his wife, and whatever excitement they had felt about the car was gone. Preston could sense the sale slipping and blamed Isaiah for that too. This is costing me time, he snapped. Do you understand that? My time has value. Isaiah sealed the trash bag and placed it carefully in the cart. So does everyone else's. Do not lecture me about value. Preston stepped to the counter, picked up a microfiber display cloth, and threw it onto the wet area at Isaiah's feet. It was not thrown hard, and it did not touch Isaiah, but the disrespect was deliberate enough for the room to feel it. There. Use something that will not leave streaks. At least do one thing to showroom standard. Isaiah looked at the cloth on the floor. Then he bent, picked it up, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter instead of using it. That cloth is for vehicle surfaces. Coffee on marble. Requires a different cleaner. Preston stared, stunned that even this attempt had failed to make Isaiah scramble. You really cannot help yourself. I am trying to avoid damaging the floor. You think you know this building better than I do. Isaiah looked around once, taking in the glass, the ceiling vents, the camera angles, the stone, the access doors, the reception desk, the conference room hallway, the people holding their breath. Yes, he said. The honesty was so simple that it stole the air from the room. Preston's mouth opened slightly. Daniel looked away for a second to hide the expression on his face. Clara's fingers moved faster now, forwarding an old email chain to her personal archive and to Victor, because something inside her had finally crossed from fear into decision. Preston recovered with a thin smile. All right. Since you know so much, tell me this. Do you know how fast a man like you can lose a contract assignment? Isaiah said, a man like me? Preston heard the trap only after stepping into it, but pride forced him to continue. A cleaning contractor with an attitude problem. That is not what you meant. The lobby went still again. Preston's clients looked at him. Daniel looked at him. Clara looked at him. Preston felt the attention and resented Isaiah for making the room intelligent. You do not get to tell me what I meant, Preston said. Then say exactly what you mean. Preston's smile disappeared. He looked Isaiah up and down, from the scuffed shoes to the faded badge to the calm black face that refused to lower itself for him. I mean, people come here to spend real money, and they should not have to step around someone who makes the place look cheap. The sentence hung there, clean enough for him to deny intent, cruel enough for everyone to understand it. Isaiah nodded once. Thank you for clarifying. Preston frowned. What does that mean? It means I heard you. Good. Then move. Isaiah looked at the entrance. The floor was dry now. The coffee was contained. The walkway was safe. He began rolling the cart toward the side corridor, not because Preston had one, but because the work was complete. Preston, mistaking movement for surrender, followed him 3 steps. And do not come back through this lobby during business hours. Isaiah stopped near the edge of the showroom. Is that an instruction from building management or from you? Preston said, from me. Then I will wait for building management. Preston's face tightened again. You are unbelievable. Isaiah turned the cart slightly so it would not block the walkway. I am available when Mr. Lang arrives. Preston looked toward Daniel. Are you going to stand there while he refuses direction? Daniel answered carefully. He said he will wait for building management. I asked for removal. There is no safety basis for removal. Preston laughed in disbelief, then pulled out his own phone. Fine. Let us make this official. He opened his camera and pointed it at Isaiah. Since you want records, let us have one. State your name and explain why you are refusing dealership direction. Clara whispered, Mr. Vale, please do not. Clara, enough. Isaiah looked into the phone without fear. His face was calm, almost tired, but his voice remained clear. My name is Isaiah Brooks. I cleaned rainwater and a coffee spill from the lobby floor. I am waiting for building management to clarify access instructions for a common area. Preston lowered the phone slightly, annoyed that the statement sounded reasonable. You left out the attitude. The camera may show that. Preston's thumb hovered over the screen. Instead of stopping, he recorded more. This is the problem today, he said into his own phone, turning it briefly toward the showroom. We have someone assigned to cleaning who refuses basic professionalism during a high-value client appointment. Behind him, Mrs. Caldwell looked away, embarrassed to be included in the lie. Mr. Caldwell quietly said, we are going to step outside for a moment. Preston swung back toward them. There is no need. I have this handled. But he did not. Everyone could see that now. The more he tried to prove control, the more control leaked away. Isaiah stood beside his cart, not trapped, not humiliated in the way Preston wanted, but steady. That steadiness forced Preston to escalate again. "I want his badge," Preston said suddenly. Daniel's face changed. "You do not have authority to take building credentials. He is in my showroom. This is the lobby edge and common entry. Do not play policy games with me." Preston stepped toward Isaiah and held out his hand. "Badge. Now." Isaiah did not reach for it. No, not loud. Not dramatic. One word, complete and immovable. Preston's eyes widened. "No. No, you refuse to identify yourself. My name is on the badge. You have said it several times. Then hand it over." "No." Daniel moved closer, voice firm but controlled. "Mr. Vale, do not touch his badge." Preston's head snapped toward Daniel. "Are you threatening me?" "I am advising you not to interfere with building credentials." For the first time that morning, Preston realized Daniel would not help him turn humiliation into procedure. That realization enraged him. "This is exactly what I am talking about," Preston said, voice rising. "The whole building has gotten sloppy. Security thinks it runs the place. Cleaning staff thinks it can argue. Reception thinks it can tell me when to stop. No wonder the owner is selling." Isaiah looked toward the conference room hallway. The words landed differently for him. The owner was selling. The buyer was standing 4 yards away with a mop handle in his hand. Preston continued, unaware of how close he was to the edge. "When the new owner comes in, the first thing I am recommending is a full reset. New security contract. New cleaning vendor. New lobby standards. People who understand where they belong." Isaiah's voice was calm. "You plan to recommend that?" "Absolutely." "To the new owner?" "Yes." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Good to know." Preston mistook the answer for sarcasm. "You think that is funny?" "No, then what is it?" Isaiah looked at him, and for the first time, he allowed Preston to see a fraction of the authority he had been hiding all morning. "Useful." Preston went silent for half a second. Then he scoffed, because scoffing was easier than thinking. "Useful," he repeated. "You hear that, Daniel? He thinks this is useful." Daniel did not answer. He was saving another clip. Clara was saving another email. The customer phone was still recording. The lobby camera continued blinking. And upstairs, in a leather folder inside the conference room, the purchase agreement waited for Isaiah Brooks to sign. Preston looked at the clock and cursed under his breath. His clients were now near the entrance, clearly reconsidering. His sales team looked shaken. The lobby no longer felt like his showroom. It felt like a room full of witnesses. He needed to regain control quickly, and men like Preston often believed cruelty could do what truth could not. He stepped closer one final time and spoke low, but not low enough. "Let me tell you something, Isaiah. People like you get one chance to stay invisible. You just lost yours." Isaiah held his gaze. "I was never invisible." The words were not loud, but they cut through the room more sharply than any shout could have. Preston did not understand them. Not yet. He only understood that the janitor had not bent, the clients had drifted away, security had refused him, reception had started documenting, and the room was no longer afraid in the same way. So he reached for the last weapon he had before the truth arrived, official consequence. "Fine," Preston said, turning toward the glass hallway that led to the conference rooms. "When building management gets here, I am going to make sure this ends today. You will apologize to my clients, you will leave through the service corridor, and by the time the new owner signs whatever papers they are signing upstairs, your name will be off every approved vendor list in this building." Isaiah's eyes moved once to the hallway, where the closing room lights were already on. Then he looked back at Preston. "You should put that in writing." Preston smiled coldly. I will. And just like that, he gave Isaiah one more gift. Not an apology. Not mercy. Evidence. Isaiah did not return to the lobby right away after Preston promised to put the threat in writing. He rolled the cleaning cart into the side corridor, not because he had been defeated, and not because Preston had finally pushed him out of sight, but because the next part of the day required patience. The service hallway was quieter than the showroom, lit by long fluorescent bulbs and lined with doors most customers never noticed: storage, maintenance, electrical, janitorial, freight elevator, staff break room. It was the part of the building that made the polished side possible. Isaiah had always respected places like that. A building told the truth in its back corridors. The marble could shine for clients, the windows could reflect expensive cars, and the coffee bar could smell like imported beans, but the service hallway showed whether people maintained what they owned or only decorated what they wanted others to see. Isaiah pushed the cart beside the break room door and stopped. His hands rested on the handle for a moment. Through the wall, he could still hear faint showroom sounds, a phone ringing, footsteps, Preston's voice somewhere beyond the glass, forced cheerful now, trying to stitch his performance back together before the clients left completely. Isaiah did not smile. He was not enjoying this. Men like Preston often assumed dignity was pride, and restraint was strategy, and silence meant someone was waiting for revenge. But Isaiah had not come to the building to trap Preston. He had come to measure the culture before he signed his name to it. Preston had simply revealed himself faster than expected. Isaiah opened the break room door and stepped inside. The room was small, with a vending machine humming in the corner, a microwave with one loose button, a bulletin board full of expired notices, and a narrow table where cleaning crew members probably ate lunch between shifts while the showroom served sparkling water in glass bottles 20 feet away. Isaiah removed his cap and set it on the table. Without it, his face looked older and stronger, the gray at his temples more visible, his eyes still calm but carrying the weight of things Preston would never have taken time to imagine. He took out his phone, unlocked it with his thumb, and read the notifications waiting on the screen. One message came from Maya Brooks: Eleanor is 12 minutes away. Seller's attorney confirmed final wire. Closing room reserved. Do you want me to come in through front or garage? Isaiah typed back with his thumbs, slow and precise, use the front. Observe the lobby. Do not announce me yet. The reply came almost immediately, Dad. Isaiah could hear her tone in that one word. Protective. Suspicious. Already angry on his behalf without knowing everything. He answered, I am fine. Need one more hour. Then he opened a secure email from Whitman Property Law. The subject line was plain enough that anyone glancing at it would have learned nothing: final closing packet, 900, Harbor Avenue. But beneath it sat the truth Preston had been insulting all morning. Purchase agreement. Escrow confirmation. Title clearance. Tenant lease summary. Building access transfer. Insurance binder. Wire receipt. Closing time, 3 p.m. Buyer, Brooks Urban Holdings, principal signatory Isaiah Brooks. Isaiah read the lines once, not because he needed reminding, but because he believed important decisions deserved one final look in quiet. This was not his first major purchase. It was not even his largest. But it was the one with the oldest echo. He had been 19 the first time he worked in a luxury dealership, back when his mother was still paying off medical bills and he was taking night classes in accounting at a community college. He had worn a uniform then too, navy instead of gray, and carried a ring of keys that opened rooms no salesperson cared about. He learned where managers hid bad invoices. He learned how much money passed through places that pretended not to see the people cleaning them. He learned that wealthy customers were not always cruel, and poor workers were not always kind, but arrogance had a sound, and he had heard it early. One sales manager used to call him the floor boy even after Isaiah corrected him twice. Another used to leave trash beside a clean bin just to watch him pick it up. Isaiah remembered standing in the wash bay one winter night, hands cracked from cleaner, looking through the glass at men celebrating a record sales month while the janitorial crew waited for overtime pay that arrived 2 weeks late. That was where he made the promise, not dramatic, not spoken to anyone, just placed quietly in his chest: if he ever held power over a building, nobody's dignity would depend on whether a man in a suit felt generous. Years later, he turned that promise into discipline. He studied after shifts. He learned property ledgers. He bought a duplex that needed work, fixed what he could with his own hands, rented it fairly, then bought another. He made mistakes, paid for them, learned faster. He invested in neglected properties, not because neglect was romantic, but because he understood hidden value. He understood roofs before renderings, maintenance before marketing, tenants before brochures. He did not become wealthy by pretending he had never carried a mop. He became wealthy because carrying one had taught him exactly what careless owners failed to see. That was why the gray uniform did not insult him. The uniform was cloth. The insult came from men who believed cloth could measure a soul. Isaiah opened the attachment for the tenant conduct section and read the highlighted clauses Maya had flagged 2 nights earlier: harassment of building personnel, interference with shared common areas, conduct damaging reputation of property, retaliation against contractors or workers, obstruction of ownership transfer operations. He did not need to add Preston's behavior to those clauses. Preston was doing that himself, out loud, on camera, in front of witnesses. Isaiah closed the file and looked toward the bulletin board. A printed memo from Victor Lang warned staff to avoid disrupting dealership appointments. Another memo reminded cleaners to use the freight elevator during peak showroom hours. Neither document mentioned safety exceptions. Neither document mentioned dignity. Isaiah photographed both. Then he took a seat at the narrow table and dialed Daniel. The security supervisor answered on the second ring, voice low. Yes. This is Isaiah. I know. Daniel paused. Are you all right? I am. Has he contacted building management again? He is still in the lobby. His client stepped outside. He is talking fast, which usually means he knows he lost the room. Isaiah looked at the vending machine reflection and saw his own face in the dark glass. Save the lobby camera, audio if available, and the feed from the showroom entrance. Also save anything from the reception desk angle. Already saving. Do not edit. Do not rename anything yet. Original files only. Understood. Daniel lowered his voice further. Mr. Brooks, I know you told me not to announce anything, but Preston just asked me who supervises your assignment. He wants your badge deactivated. Isaiah almost smiled at the word assignment. Let him make the request through Victor. He also said he wants this in writing. Good. Daniel was quiet for a second. You expected something like this? Isaiah looked at the mop bucket through the open break room door. I expected to learn something. I did. Do you want me to intervene if he comes back? Only if there is a safety issue. Otherwise, let him speak. Daniel understood. Not fully, but enough. Yes, sir. Isaiah ended the call before the respect in Daniel's voice could become too obvious if anyone entered. A minute later, Clara appeared at the break room entrance. She stopped when she saw Isaiah seated calmly at the table with his phone and the printed legal packet partly visible beneath his lunch bag. I am sorry, she said quickly, almost whispering. I know that does not fix anything, but I am sorry. Isaiah slid the papers slightly under the bag, not hiding them in panic, just controlling what she needed to know. You did not spill the coffee. Clara's eyes were wet with anger she had been swallowing for too long. No, but I watched him do things like that before. Not exactly that, but close enough. I told myself it was not my place, or that I needed this job, or that Victor would handle it if it got bad enough. Then it got normal. Isaiah looked at her with no judgment in his face. That made it easier for her to continue. He sends emails. Not direct slurs. Never that stupid. But he writes things about keeping certain people away from premium clients, making sure cleaning staff are invisible, telling delivery drivers to wait in the rain because their uniforms clash with the showroom. I saved some of them. I did not know if they mattered. They matter, Isaiah said. Do not send them to me yet. Send them to Victor and copy your personal record if company policy allows. Keep the originals. Clara blinked. Why are you telling me that like you know how this works? Isaiah looked at the table, then back at her. Because people lose important evidence when they try to fix it too quickly. She studied him more closely. For the first time, confusion broke through her fear. You are not with the cleaning company, are you? Isaiah did not answer directly. He folded his hands on the table. I am someone who wants the truth handled properly. Clara stared at him another second, then nodded slowly. Maybe she understood a little. Maybe she did not. But something in his calm made her stand straighter. Eleanor Whitman just arrived, she said. She asked for Mr. Brooks. Isaiah's expression did not change, but his eyes moved to the clock. 11:18. What did you tell her? I said I would check. Clara hesitated. Is that you? The break room seemed to hold its breath. Isaiah stood, picked up his cap, and placed it back on his head. Not yet. Clara's lips parted slightly. Not yet? Give Ms. Whitman the conference room. Offer her coffee. Tell her my daughter is on her way. Do not mention where I am. Clara looked toward the lobby, then back to him. Preston is going to lose his mind. Preston is going to make choices, Isaiah said. That is different. Clara nodded once, more firmly now. All right. She turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Brooks? The name came out softly, almost uncertain. Isaiah looked at her. Yes. Should I be scared? Isaiah's face softened. Of telling the truth? Maybe. Most people are at first. That is not very comforting. No, he said. But it is honest. Then he added, you will not be left standing alone. Clara swallowed, nodded again, and returned to the lobby. Isaiah waited 10 seconds before stepping into the hallway. Through the narrow interior window, he saw Eleanor Whitman arrive near reception, a tall white woman in her early 60s with silver hair, a navy coat, and the controlled patience of an attorney who charged by the hour but missed nothing for free. She looked around the lobby once, taking in Preston's tense posture, the cleaning cart marks, Daniel's position, Clara's expression, and the conference room lights. Eleanor did not know every detail yet, but she knew an atmosphere after damage had entered it. Preston approached her with his salesman's smile, probably assuming she was connected to the wealthy buyer he had imagined in his head. Isaiah could not hear the whole exchange, but he saw Preston extend his hand too quickly. Eleanor accepted it with professional distance. Clara gestured toward the conference room. Preston tried to walk with them. Eleanor said something that made him stop. Isaiah turned away before Preston could look toward the hall. His phone vibrated again. Maya, parking now. Front entrance in 2 minutes. Isaiah replied, walk slowly. Listen first. Maya answered, you are enjoying this too much. Isaiah looked at the coffee stain residue on one towel inside the cart bag, the sign still drying near the lobby entrance, the legal documents in his email, and the hallway that connected service to ownership without anyone in the showroom understanding it yet. He typed, no. I am letting it finish honestly. He put the phone away and returned to the cart. There was one more thing he needed before the reveal could come. Not anger. Not drama. A complete record. Preston had already insulted him, ordered him away, created a spill, demanded removal, tried to take his badge, threatened his assignment, and promised to put it in writing. But Isaiah knew people like Preston often became most careless when they believed they had almost won. So Isaiah did not rush to the conference room. He did not remove the uniform. He did not announce his name from the lobby. He wiped the handle of the mop, checked the cart, and rolled it slowly back toward the front, where the showroom lights bounced off luxury paint and false power. His calm was not weakness. It was the kind of control a man earns when he has already survived the rooms that tried to erase him. By the time Maya Brooks entered through the glass doors, wearing a charcoal suit and carrying the closing binder, Isaiah was once again visible near the edge of the lobby, gray uniform, steady eyes, quiet hands. Maya saw him immediately. For 1 second, daughter and father looked at each other across the polished floor. She saw the mop. She saw Preston. She saw the red camera light. She understood enough to keep walking without greeting him. Preston noticed Maya next. His expression changed instantly. He saw the suit, the confidence, the leather binder, and placed her in the category he respected. He stepped toward her with a smile he had never offered Isaiah. "Good morning," he said smoothly. "You must be here for the building closing." Maya looked at his outstretched hand, then at Isaiah standing beside the cleaning cart. She did not take Preston's hand right away. "I am here for my client," she said. Preston smiled wider, unaware that the word client was already closing around him. "Excellent. If there is anything Vail Premier Motors can do to make the new ownership feel welcome, I would be happy to personally assist." Maya finally shook his hand for half a second, then released it. "I am sure you would." Her voice was polite, but Isaiah heard the steel beneath it. Preston did not. He was too busy performing for someone he believed mattered. Isaiah lowered his eyes to the floor so the truth would not arrive too early through his face. The attorney was here. His daughter was here. The documents were ready. The cameras were running. And Preston, still unaware that the janitor he had tried to erase was the buyer everyone was waiting for, had only 1 hour left to prove exactly why he did not deserve the power he thought he had. By the time Maya Brooks entered the front doors, the building had started collecting the truth from every angle. Preston still believed he was managing an inconvenience, a cleaning staff problem, a minor disturbance that could be rewritten by someone with a better title and a louder voice. But the lobby was no longer only a lobby. It had become a record. Camera 7 watched the entrance from above the revolving glass door. Camera 3 caught the edge of the showroom and the coffee counter. Camera 9 covered the reception desk, where Clara Jensen sat with her jaw tight and her hands moving carefully across her keyboard. Daniel Price had already opened a protected incident folder on the security system, labeling the first clip by time. Instead of opinion, 10:34 a.m., lobby floor safety dispute. The second, 10:39 a.m., intentional spill. The third, 10:44 a.m., badge demand. He did not write insult, discrimination, or retaliation. Daniel knew better than to describe what a camera could show for itself. Original files mattered. Time stamps mattered. Chain of custody mattered. He exported copies to the secure drive, left the originals untouched, and made a written note that no one from the dealership had authorization to modify common area footage. Preston, still near the reception desk, saw Daniel typing and mistook it for hesitation. "Good," he said. "Finally documenting this properly." Daniel did not look up. "Yes, Mr. Vail. It is being documented." Preston heard agreement because agreement was what he needed. He did not hear the warning. Across the lobby, Isaiah stood beside the cleaning cart with the same controlled posture, as if nothing about the morning had surprised him. Maya noticed the wet floor sign, the bagged towels, the angle of the camera lights, her father's gray uniform, and Preston's bright sales smile all in one sweep. She had spent years reading rooms before reading contracts. This room was loud without anyone shouting. Eleanor Whitman stepped from the conference hallway carrying a leather folder and nodded once to Maya. "Counselor Brooks," she said. "The seller's side is ready." We can begin preliminary review whenever your client is ready. Preston's eyes sharpened at the word client, but he still did not connect it to Isaiah. Excellent, he said, sliding into the conversation as if invited. Preston Vale, Senior Sales Director. I represent the ground floor anchor tenant. We are very excited to support the new ownership transition. Maya looked at him with perfect professional calm. I am sure the transition file will reflect that. Preston smiled, not understanding that file was a dangerous word. Absolutely. In fact, I was just dealing with a small lobby conduct issue before you arrived. It may actually be worth raising with whoever handles building operations after closing. Eleanor's eyes moved briefly to Isaiah, then back to Preston. A lobby conduct issue? Cleaning. Staff, Preston said, lowering his voice in a way that still carried. Unfortunately, some people do not understand front-facing standards. I have asked for the matter to be escalated. Maya tilted her head slightly. Escalated how? Preston welcomed the question. It gave him a stage again. Removal from showroom-facing areas, written notice to the vendor, and preferably no reassignment to this property. The new owner will want a clean culture from day one. Isaiah said nothing. His silence was not absence. It was pressure. Clara heard Preston's words and opened a folder she had hidden inside her email drafts. It contained screenshots and forwarded messages she had once been too scared to send anywhere. One email from Preston complained that cleaning staff should be kept away from premium client sightlines. Another called a courier's uniform damaging to luxury perception. A third asked why security allowed non-client foot traffic to use the lobby during delivery appointments, even though those people were tenants, contractors, and workers with every right to enter. Clara attached the emails to a message addressed to Victor Lang, with Maya and Eleanor copied only after she paused, looked at Isaiah, and found the courage to do it. Her finger hovered over send. Then Preston said, I am tired of people pretending this is personal. This is business. Luxury has standards. Clara pressed send. The message left her outbox with a small sound nobody else heard, but it felt to her like a door opening. At the same time, Mr. Howard Bell stepped out of the elevator from the 4th floor, carrying a brown leather briefcase and wearing the careful expression of an older man who had learned not to interrupt trouble unless trouble had finally found witnesses. He had seen Preston near the lobby before. He had been spoken down to before. He had walked around the showroom rope line like a guest in someone else's pride, even though his consulting office had paid rent upstairs for 12 years. He slowed when he saw Isaiah, Maya, Eleanor, Daniel, and Preston gathered under the lights. Everything all right down here? He asked. Preston turned with a strained smile. Mr. Bell. Now is not a good time. Mr. Bell looked at him for a long second. That is what you said last time too. Preston's face tightened. Excuse me. When you told me the elevators were that way as if I had wandered in by mistake. The lobby shifted again. Preston forced a laugh. I think you misunderstood a basic direction. Mr. Bell looked toward Daniel. I did not misunderstand it then, and I do not misunderstand it now. Daniel made a note. Witness present, prior similar incident referenced. Maya watched Preston's expression change from confidence to irritation. Patterns mattered in civil disputes. Patterns mattered in lease enforcement. Patterns mattered when a person claimed one bad moment while leaving a trail of many. A young customer near the lounge, the one who had recorded Preston earlier, stepped toward Clara's desk and spoke quietly. I have video, he said. I was not trying to get involved, but I caught him spilling the coffee and telling the janitor he did not belong at the front. Clara looked at Maya, not Preston. Maya gave a calm nod. Please do not delete it. Send the original file if you are willing. Do not crop it. Do not add captions. The original timestamp is important. The customer nodded, relieved to be given a simple instruction instead of drama. Preston heard enough to understand something was slipping. Why is everyone acting like this is a court case, he snapped. Eleanor answered before Maya could. Because people with nothing to hide usually do not object to accurate records. Preston turned toward her, still trying to calculate whether she was useful, dangerous, or both. With respect, you are hearing one side of a situation. Isaiah finally spoke from beside the cart. Then give yours clearly. Preston looked at him as if the floor itself had interrupted. I am not talking to you. You have been talking about me for 30 minutes. The sentence was mild, but it pulled the room toward the simple truth again. Preston felt it and panicked in the only way he knew how, more control. He pulled out his phone and began recording Isaiah again. Fine. Let us make sure the new ownership understands exactly what kind of attitude we are dealing with. Say again why you refuse dealership direction. Isaiah looked at the phone lens, then at Preston. I maintained a wet floor sign near an active water hazard, cleaned a spill you created, preserved safety in the common lobby, and waited for building management to clarify whether a tenant employee can restrict access to shared property. Maya's eyes flicked with pride, but her face remained professional. Preston lowered the phone, furious that Isaiah had turned the recording into a statement. You rehearsed that. No, Isaiah said. I remembered what happened. Daniel saved another clip. Clara's email responses began arriving from Victor, who wrote that he was coming down immediately and that no credential should be touched by dealership staff. Maya asked Clara to print Preston's relevant emails with full headers. Eleanor asked Daniel for the incident export request form. Mr. Bell offered to write a statement about his prior experience. The customer sent his video to Clara's secure building address. One by one, the room stopped being afraid of Preston's version. It did not become loud. It became organized. That was worse for him. He could argue with emotion. He could dismiss complaints. He could mock discomfort. He did not know how to fight a timeline. At 11:46, Victor Lang arrived from the elevator with a folder under his arm and worry already in his eyes. He was a man who had spent too long trying to keep tenants happy without asking whether happy tenants were good ones. What is going on? He asked, looking from Preston to Isaiah to Maya and Eleanor. Preston moved first. Victor, thank God. This cleaning contractor disrupted my client appointment, refused direction, accused me in front of customers, and now apparently everyone is building a file over spilled coffee. Victor looked at Isaiah. Something in Isaiah's face made him hesitate. He had seen the man around the building before, but only as part of the temporary cleaning assignment. Or that was what he had believed. Mr. Brooks? Victor said cautiously, not yet with full understanding, but with enough uncertainty to make Preston blink. Mr. Brooks? Preston repeated. Why are you calling him that? Victor looked toward Eleanor, then Maya, then back at Isaiah. Eleanor's expression told him to slow down. Isaiah gave a small shake of his head. Not yet. Victor swallowed. His name is Isaiah Brooks. Preston laughed in disbelief. I know his name. I am asking why you said it like he is someone. No one answered too quickly. The silence did more damage than any speech could have. Preston looked around the lobby and saw, for the first time, that too many people knew something he did not. But instead of stopping, he doubled down, because men who live on false authority often mistake uncertainty for attack. Fine, he said. Let us put it all in writing. Victor, I am formally requesting that Isaiah Brooks be removed from all front-facing areas of this property, that his cleaning vendor be notified of his behavior, and that dealership standards be respected by the incoming owner. I am also documenting that security failed to act when asked. Daniel looked at Victor. For the record, no safety basis existed for removal. Also, Mr. Vale requested access to building credentials without authority. Preston snapped, I asked for a badge because he was refusing direction. Maya said, please continue. I want to make sure the sequence is clear. Preston turned to her with a stiff smile. "Counselor, I appreciate your concern, but this is an internal building operations matter." "Not entirely," Maya said. "It may affect tenant conduct review, access control, employee harassment policy, and closing disclosures." Preston's smile weakened. "Closing disclosures?" Eleanor opened her folder and removed a document with yellow tabs, but she did not reveal the signature page yet. "The buyer has requested updated information on tenant-related complaints and unresolved conduct issues before final execution." Preston looked at Victor. "You never said that." Victor rubbed his forehead. "Because I did not expect you to create a new one in the lobby this morning." That landed. Preston's face hardened. "I did not create anything." "He did." He pointed at Isaiah. "He stood where he did not belong and made this building look cheap in front of my clients." Isaiah's eyes moved. To the camera again. "There it is," Mr. Bell said quietly. Preston swung toward him. "Stay out of this." Mr. Bell did not flinch. "I stayed out of it last time. That was my mistake." Clara handed Victor the printed emails. "These are from the last 6 months." Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "I should have escalated them sooner." Preston stared at the papers. "You printed internal communication?" Clara lifted her chin. "You sent them through the building system." Daniel placed a USB drive in a small evidence envelope and wrote the time across the seal. "Footage export 1. Original preserved." The young customer raised his phone. "And I sent my video." Preston looked from face to face, suddenly surrounded not by enemies, but by consequences. Still, he did not understand the most important part. He thought he was fighting for his reputation before a new owner arrived. He did not know the new owner had heard enough. Eleanor checked her watch. "It is nearly noon. We should move to the conference room for preliminary review." Preston took a step toward the glass hallway. "I should be present. As senior director of the anchor tenant, I can explain the dealership's operational needs." Maya blocked nothing, but her posture made the boundary clear. "You are not part of the buyer's legal review." Preston's smile turned sharp. "With respect, the buyer will want to hear from the tenant that makes this building valuable." Isaiah looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment the lobby noise seemed to fade. Preston had spent all morning proving he believed value, wore a suit, drove a luxury car, paid premium rent, and never carried a mop. He had not considered that value might also stand quietly in a gray uniform, letting every insult mature into evidence. Isaiah did not reveal himself. Not yet. He only said, "Maybe the buyer already has what he needs." Preston frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" Isaiah picked up the handle of the cleaning cart and rolled it slowly toward the conference hallway, not into the room, just near enough that Preston had to watch him move closer to the place Preston believed he had no right to enter. Eleanor did not stop him. Maya did not stop him. Victor did not stop him. Daniel saved one more camera angle. Clara placed the printed emails into a folder. Mr. Bell sat on the lobby bench, ready to write his statement. The young customer waited with his original video saved. And Preston, still blind to the shape of the day, reached for his phone and began typing the written complaint he had promised. He wrote that Isaiah Brooks was disruptive. He wrote that cleaning staff should be restricted from premium areas. He wrote that the new owner needed to understand hierarchy. He wrote it all with his own thumbs, time-stamped, from his own device, under cameras he had forgotten were watching. By noon, the building had gathered footage, emails, witnesses, statements, legal clauses, a tenant complaint history, and Preston's own written demand. The payoff had not arrived yet. But it no longer needed a miracle. Preston had built the case himself, sentence by sentence, while the man he mocked waited calmly for 3 o'clock. At 12:31, Preston Vale made the choice that turned a public insult into something he could no longer walk back. Until then, He had been cruel, arrogant, careless, and exposed, but he still had a door he could have used. He could have apologized. He could have blamed stress. He could have taken Victor's warning, left the lobby, and let the closing proceed without making himself the center of it. Instead, he stood near the glass conference hallway, watching Isaiah Brooks roll the cleaning cart toward the place where attorneys were waiting, and something inside Preston refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. The janitor was too close to the conference room. The janitor was too calm. The janitor was being treated with too much patience by people Preston had already decided were above him. Eleanor Whitman had not dismissed him. Maya Brooks had not looked embarrassed by him. Victor Lang had not ordered him away. Daniel Price had not touched his badge. Clara Jensen had printed emails. Mr. Howard Bell had stayed in the lobby. Even the young customer with the phone had not backed down. Preston felt the room changing around one man in a gray uniform, and because Preston could not understand dignity, he decided to call it manipulation. "Stop right there," he said. Isaiah stopped beside the hallway entrance, one hand on the cart handle. "Is there a safety issue?" Preston laughed once, hard and humorless. "Do not do that. Do not hide behind that calm voice like you are the reasonable one." Isaiah looked at him evenly. "I am waiting for the attorney to finish preparing the room." Preston's eyes narrowed. "You are not going into that room." The sentence landed across the lobby. Clara looked up from the printer. Daniel straightened at the security station. Maya's face became still in a way Isaiah knew well. It was the stillness she had before cross-examining someone who did not yet know he had contradicted himself. Eleanor turned from the conference room doorway, one document still in her hand. Victor took a slow breath. Preston noticed all of it and mistook concern for proof that he had regained control. "I have tolerated enough," he said, stepping closer. "You have disrupted my clients, interfered with my delivery floor, argued with dealership leadership, encouraged staff to collect some ridiculous file, and now you are pushing a cleaning cart toward a private ownership meeting as if this is your building." Isaiah did not answer immediately. He looked once at the camera dome above the hallway, then at Daniel, then at Preston. "You should be careful with your next words." Preston smiled with open contempt. "There it is. The threat finally comes out." It was not a threat. Of course it was. Preston turned toward Maya and Eleanor. "You heard him. Now he is threatening me in front of counsel." Eleanor's voice was cool. "I heard a warning. A warning from cleaning staff is not relevant to a legal closing." Maya looked at Preston. "It might be more relevant than you think." Preston pointed toward Isaiah without looking away from Maya. "No. I am done with this performance. Whoever your client is, they need to see what happens when building standards collapse. This man is not stepping into an executive area." Isaiah said softly, "You do not have authority over this hallway." Preston stepped in front of the cart. "I have authority over the showroom experience. This is not the showroom. It leads to my showroom. It leads to the conference room." Preston leaned forward, his voice dropping but still carrying through the marble lobby. "It leads wherever I say it leads until someone with more authority tells me otherwise." Isaiah held his gaze. "Someone with more authority already has." For 1 second, Preston almost heard it. Something in the way Isaiah spoke made the air tighten. But pride is a loud thing, and Preston had been listening to his own for years. He reached for the cleaning cart and pushed it a few inches backward with the palm of his hand. Not violently, not enough to create danger, but enough to make the message public: "Move back, know your place." The wheels squeaked against the polished floor. Daniel immediately stepped forward. "Mr. Vale, do not interfere with building equipment." Preston snapped, "Stay at your desk." Daniel did not. "I am advising you again. Do not interfere." Preston looked around the lobby, humiliated by the fact that a security supervisor had corrected him in front of witnesses. He turned back to Isaiah and saw no fear there. That was what broke the last thin thread of self-control he had left. "Give me the badge," Preston said. Isaiah's hand remained on the cart. "No, you are not authorized to be here." "That is incorrect." "Then prove it." Isaiah's eyes shifted once toward the conference room. "The proof is already here." Preston took that as another insult. He reached toward Isaiah's chest, not grabbing his body, but taking hold of the plastic badge clipped to the gray shirt. The badge tilted under his fingers. The lobby froze. Daniel moved fast enough to close the distance but stopped short of contact, voice firm and clear. "Release the badge, Mr. Vale." Maya spoke at the same time, lower but sharper. "Take your hand off him." Eleanor added, "This is now a documented access interference issue." Preston released the badge as if the plastic had burned him, then lifted both hands in fake innocence. "I did not touch him. I touched a credential that should not be active." Isaiah looked down at the badge, slowly straightened it, and smoothed the front of his uniform. The movement was small, but every person in the lobby felt the dignity in it. Preston had tried to make him look like a problem. Instead, Preston had made himself look exactly like the complaint file described. Isaiah's voice remained steady. "Last chance." Preston scoffed. "Last chance for what?" "To stop." Preston's eyes flashed. "You do not give me chances." "Today, I do." The words were quiet enough that only the front half of the lobby heard them, but they traveled deeper than a shout. Clara stopped gathering papers. Mr. Bell looked down at his hands. Daniel saved another time-stamped marker. Maya watched her father with a pain she kept behind her professional expression. She knew what it cost him not to reveal everything immediately. She knew he could end this with one sentence. But Isaiah was letting the truth become complete, not because he wanted Preston to suffer longer, but because he wanted the system to have no excuse to look away. Preston, of course, saw none of that. He saw only a black man in a janitor uniform telling him to stop. "No," Preston said. "Here is what is going to happen. You are going to apologize to my staff and my clients. You are going to take that cart through the service hallway. You are going to stay away from the conference rooms. And when the new owner arrives, I am going to recommend a full personnel reset so this building can stop pretending that every worker with a grievance is a victim." Victor stepped forward. "Preston, enough." Preston turned on him. "No, Victor. You let this building slide for years, and now everyone is acting shocked that someone has to enforce standards." Victor's face flushed. "You are blocking a legal closing area. I am protecting it." Maya said, "From whom?" Preston pointed at Isaiah again. "From him." No one spoke. That single word revealed more than his emails had. From him. Not from danger. Not from disorder. From him. From a man he had never truly seen. Isaiah asked, "What exactly do you believe I am going to do in that room?" Preston laughed, too angry to edit himself now. "You are not going to do anything in that room because you are not that kind of person." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What kind of person?" Preston looked at her, then at Maya, then back at Isaiah. He knew he should stop. Some buried part of him knew it. But he had built a career on making other people smaller, and now the room was asking him to explain the shape of that habit. So he reached for the language he always used when prejudice wanted a clean suit. "Executive spaces require executive presence," he said. "Owners, counsel, investors, decision makers. Not contractors wandering in with a mop and a chip on their shoulder." Isaiah nodded slowly, as if receiving a final piece of information. "Thank you." Preston frowned. "Stop thanking me. I am acknowledging the statement." "You are mocking me." "No," Isaiah said. "You are recording yourself." Preston looked up at the hallway camera, then toward Daniel, then at the customer's phone near the lounge. He had forgotten all of them for a moment, and the realization made him more reckless, not less. "Fine," he said, pulling out his own phone again. "Let us record it all. Let us show the new owner exactly what kind of circus was waiting for them on closing day." He held the phone up, pointed it toward Isaiah, and began speaking as though narrating evidence for his own defense. "This is Preston Vale, Senior Sales Director of Vale Premier Motors. Time is 12:41 p.m. I am documenting an ongoing disruption by cleaning contractor Isaiah Brooks, who has refused multiple directions, interfered with a premium client environment, and is attempting to enter a private executive conference area without authorization." Maya's expression did not move, but her eyes sharpened. Eleanor quietly removed a pen from her coat pocket and wrote the time on the top of her notepad. Daniel saved another clip. Clara whispered, "He is doing it himself." Mr. Bell answered under his breath, "They usually do when they think nobody counts the words." Preston lowered the phone toward Isaiah. "State your reason for attempting to enter that room." Isaiah looked into the phone lens. "I have business there." "What business?" "Scheduled business." "Cleaning business?" Preston asked, voice full of contempt. Isaiah did not blink. "No," Preston smiled, believing he had cornered him. "Then show me your invitation." Isaiah's eyes moved to Maya. She did not intervene. He looked back at Preston. "You are not entitled to it." Preston's smile vanished. "I am entitled to protect this dealership from unauthorized access." Eleanor said, "The conference room is not dealership premises." Preston snapped, "It is adjacent to our leased floor." Adjacent does not create authority. I am not taking legal advice from someone who just walked in. Eleanor's tone remained even. That is fortunate. I was not offering it to you. The lobby absorbed the line, and Preston's face burned. He needed to win one visible thing. Just one. His gaze fell on the janitor badge again. If you will not hand over the badge, I am calling Baltimore police for trespass. Victor reacted immediately. Preston, do not do that. Preston looked at him with disbelief. Why not? If he is authorized, he can explain it to them. Maya stepped forward. Be very careful about making a false or reckless access complaint during an active real estate closing. Preston pointed his phone toward her now. And you are who, exactly, besides someone defending a disruptive contractor? Maya's voice stayed level. Counsel. For whom? For the buyer. Preston's expression changed for half a second, then he recovered. Then you should want this handled before your buyer arrives. Maya looked at Isaiah. The buyer is aware. Preston misunderstood again. Good. Then they can watch me fix it. He dialed. Clara covered her mouth. Daniel shook his head once, not in fear, but in disbelief. Victor said, Preston, I am telling you as building manager, do not report trespass. He is not trespassing. Preston ignored him. When the dispatcher answered, he shifted into his cleanest voice. Yes, I am calling from 900, Harbor Avenue, Vale Premier Motors. We have an unauthorized cleaning contractor refusing to leave a restricted business area and creating a disturbance during a high-value client appointment. Isaiah's eyes lowered for a moment. Not from fear. From disappointment. This was the line. Insults were ugly. Coffee was petty. Badge interference was serious. But calling law enforcement on a man you had been told was not trespassing, describing him as unauthorized while cameras and management contradicted you, trying to turn your discomfort into an official complaint, that changed the story. Preston listened to the dispatcher, then said, No, he is not being aggressive, but he is refusing direction and attempting to enter a private area. Yes, we have security here, but security is not acting. Daniel quietly marked the time. Maya took out her phone and sent a short message to a contact labeled Corporate Counsel, Dealership Group. Eleanor stepped aside and called the seller's attorney in the conference room, telling him to remain seated and document the delay. Victor rubbed both hands over his face like a man watching his own negligence become part of a deposition. Preston ended the call and looked satisfied. "There," he said. "Now we will see who belongs where." Isaiah looked at him. "You were told by building management that I am not trespassing. I was told a lot of things by people who seem confused today. You told the dispatcher I was unauthorized. You have not proven otherwise. You told the dispatcher I was in a restricted business area. You are attempting to enter one. You told the dispatcher security was not acting. They are not." Isaiah nodded. "All right." Preston frowned again. That calm answer annoyed him more than panic would have. "That is all you have to say?" "Yes." "You are not worried?" Isaiah looked toward the conference room, where the glass reflected the lobby like two worlds overlapping, the man in the janitor uniform, the attorney with the folder, the daughter in the charcoal suit, the security supervisor at the monitors, the salesman with the phone still in his hand, the building manager who now knew this would not disappear. "No," Isaiah said. "But you should be." Preston gave a short laugh, but there was less strength in it now. "There it is again. Another threat." "No," Isaiah said. "Another warning." The sound of the elevator opened behind them. Two dealership corporate representatives stepped out earlier than expected, alerted by Maya's message and Victor's frantic email chain. One was a regional operations director named Stephanie Hale, and the other was a corporate human resources officer carrying a tablet. Preston turned, confused but hopeful for half a second, assuming reinforcements had arrived for him. "Stephanie, good. Perfect timing." Stephanie looked from Preston to the lobby, to Isaiah, to the cart, to Maya and Eleanor, to Daniel standing beside the security desk. Her face did not offer Preston the rescue he expected. "Preston," she said carefully, "why did I receive an urgent message that you may have interfered with a building closing and called police on a property-authorized individual?" Preston's smile faltered. "That is not what happened." Daniel said, "The footage is preserved." Clara lifted the folder of emails. "So are these." Mr. Bell said, "And I will give a statement." The young customer raised his phone slightly. "I have the spill on video." Preston looked at all of them, and still, somehow, his pride tried one more time to stand. "This is absurd," he said. "All of you are acting like I attacked someone. I maintained standards. I protected a luxury environment. I stopped a janitor from walking into a room where he did not belong." Isaiah's face was quiet. Maya's jaw tightened. Eleanor looked at the clock. 12:58. Preston had crossed every reasonable line. He had insulted, staged, interfered, threatened employment, touched a credential, ignored management, documented his own bias, and now made a formal access complaint after being warned. There was nothing left to interpret kindly. The room had reached the point where mercy would no longer mean patience, it would mean pretending not to see. Stephanie asked, "Who is the authorized individual?" Preston gestured toward Isaiah without turning. "Him. Allegedly." The word came out soaked in contempt. Isaiah stepped away from the cart and adjusted his badge one final time. His uniform still carried a faint coffee mark near one shoe. His cap still sat low. His hands were steady. He looked not at Preston first, but at Maya, as if asking whether the record was enough. Maya gave the smallest nod. Eleanor closed her folder. Daniel saved the last clip. Clara held the emails against her chest. Victor lowered his eyes. Preston, sensing something about to happen but not understanding what, said, "What now? Is the janitor going to give a speech?" Isaiah turned back to him. "No," he said. "The paperwork will." And for the first time all morning, Preston Vale had no answer. For one long second after Isaiah said the paperwork would speak, nobody in the lobby moved. Preston Vale still held his phone at his side, still wearing the expression of a man who believed the next sentence would somehow return the room to his control. Outside the glass walls, the rain softened into mist, and headlights slid across the wet street beyond the dealership entrance. Inside, the marble lobby reflected everyone's shoes, the cleaning cart, the yellow wet floor sign, the conference room door, and Isaiah Brooks standing in a gray uniform with a faint coffee mark near one shoe. Preston looked from Isaiah to Maya, then to Eleanor, then to the dealership corporate representatives, trying to decide which person mattered most. He still chose wrong. Fine, Preston said, forcing a dry laugh. Let us see the paperwork. I would love to know what document gives a janitor the right to delay a building transition. Maya stepped forward first. She did not raise her voice. She did not defend her father with emotion, although every part of her face showed she had reason to. She opened the charcoal binder she had carried through the front door and placed it on the reception counter, where the camera above Clara's desk could see the cover page clearly. Eleanor Whitman came beside her and removed a second folder from her leather case. The pages were thick, tabbed, and signed in blue where preliminary acknowledgments had already been completed. Stephanie Hale, the dealership regional operations director, looked at the documents, then at Preston, and her posture changed from confusion to concern. Preston saw that shift and frowned. What is this? Eleanor looked at Isaiah. Mr. Brooks, with your permission. The name landed softly, but it changed the air. Mr. Brooks. Not Isaiah. Not cleaning staff. Not contractor. Mr. Brooks. Preston blinked once, then gave a dismissive smile. His last name is Brooks. That does not make him your buyer. Maya turned a page. No, the purchase agreement does. She placed one finger beneath the buyer line without touching the ink. Brooks Urban Holdings, principal signatory, Isaiah Brooks. Silence moved through the lobby like a slow door closing. Clara looked down at the page, then back at Isaiah, and her eyes widened as everything she had almost guessed became real. Daniel, who had known enough to be careful but not enough to see the whole picture, lowered his chin with quiet respect. Mr. Bell sat very still on the lobby bench, one hand resting on his briefcase. The young customer stopped recording for a moment, not because the moment was over, but because even he understood this was no longer a spectacle. Preston stared at the page and laughed once, too quickly. That is impossible. Isaiah did not move. Maya said, it is fully funded. Eleanor added, title is clear. Maya turned another page. Escrow confirmation received at 9:17 this morning. Eleanor placed a third document beside it. Transfer documents are prepared for final execution at 3 o'clock. Maya looked directly at Preston. And the man you have spent this morning trying to remove from the building is the buyer. Preston's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes went to Isaiah's uniform, to the mop bucket, to the badge he had tried to take, to the coffee towels sealed in the cart bag, then back to the documents. The picture would not fit inside his pride. He tried to break it apart. No. No, this is some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe he works for the buyer. Maybe he is related to the buyer. But he is not. His voice trailed off because Maya was already opening her wallet. She removed her bar card and business identification, then placed them beside the binder. Maya Brooks. Real estate counsel for Brooks Urban Holdings. Also his daughter. That second sentence hit Preston harder than the first. His eyes snapped from Maya to Isaiah. For the first time all morning, he saw a relationship where he had assumed a category. He saw why Maya had not taken his hand with warmth. He saw why Eleanor had watched him like a man digging under his own feet. He saw why Daniel had saved every clip. But recognition was not the same as humility. You should have said something, Preston said, voice thin now. Isaiah looked at him. You never asked who I was. You told me where I belonged. The lobby went quiet again. That was the moment the power changed hands. Not when the documents appeared. Not when Maya said daughter. It changed when Preston realized Isaiah had not been hiding because he was afraid. He had been listening because Preston was telling the truth about himself. Eleanor gestured toward the conference room. Mr. Brooks, the seller's counsel is waiting. Isaiah nodded. Then, slowly, he removed the faded cap from his head and set it on the cleaning cart. He unclipped the janitor badge from his shirt, not with shame, but with care, as if even the disguise deserved respect because honest work was never the insult. He smoothed the front of the gray uniform, picked up the purchase folder, and walked past Preston toward the conference room. No one blocked him this time. Preston stepped half an inch aside without realizing he had done it. That small movement said more than any apology could have. Inside the glass conference room, the long table had been arranged with water glasses, pens, folders, and a metal box containing access keys and ownership materials. The door remained open, so the lobby could see but not interrupt. Isaiah sat at the buyer's chair. The same man Preston had ordered toward the service hallway now sat at the head of the table, under warm conference lights, with attorneys on both sides waiting for his signature. Eleanor placed the final documents in front of him. Maya stood just behind his left shoulder. Isaiah read the first page, turned it, signed once, turned again, signed again. The pen moved steadily, without performance. Each signature made the morning smaller and the truth larger. Brooks Urban Holdings became the owner of 900 Harbor Avenue. The building did not shake. The cars did not move. No music played. But in the lobby, everyone felt the transfer. Preston watched through the glass wall as if trapped outside a room he had thought he controlled. His face had lost its showroom smile. The color had drained from it in slow stages, disbelief first, then embarrassment, then fear. When Isaiah finished, Eleanor closed the folder and slid the metal key box across the table. Congratulations, Mr. Brooks. Isaiah placed one hand on the box. He did not look triumphant. He looked responsible. That made the moment heavier. Maya opened the conference room door wider. Mr. Vale, she said. Preston stiffened. Yes. The buyer is ready to address the tenant conduct issue you escalated. Preston swallowed. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Daniel's voice came from the security station, calm and clear. The footage is ready. Clara lifted the printed emails. So are the prior communications. Mr. Bell stood with his statement in hand. Stephanie Hale looked at Preston with the expression of a corporate officer already calculating damage. The human resources representative opened her tablet. Isaiah stepped out of the conference room holding the new keys, still wearing the gray uniform, still carrying the dignity Preston had failed to damage. Preston tried a smile, but it collapsed before it became one. Mr. Brooks, he said, forcing respect into a voice that had forgotten how to use it honestly. Isaiah looked at him for a moment, then at the lobby, the staff, the witnesses, the cameras, and the floor where the coffee had been. You wanted the new owner to understand the culture of this building, Isaiah said. I do. Preston had no answer. Every title he trusted had turned against him. Senior director meant nothing beside ownership. A leased showroom meant nothing beside a signed deed. A loud voice meant nothing beside footage, witnesses, emails, and a name on the purchase agreement. Isaiah did not have to announce victory. The keys in his hand did that. The silence did that. Preston's own words did that. He had mocked the man holding the mop because he thought power arrived in a suit. Now the man in the janitor uniform owned the floor beneath his feet. Isaiah did not ask Daniel to play the footage loudly. He did not need volume to humiliate Preston, Preston's own words had already done that. The lobby had become still around the new owner's keys in Isaiah's hand, and the difference between power and noise had never been clearer. Preston stood near the edge of the showroom with his phone still in his hand, his face pale under the bright dealership lights, while Stephanie Hale from corporate operations and the human resources officer positioned themselves beside Victor Lang. Maya placed the signed purchase folder on the reception counter. Eleanor stood slightly behind Isaiah, legal pad open, ready to document every step. The first consequence came quietly. Daniel connected the preserved security file to the lobby monitor, not the massive sales screen, not as a show, but as an official review. The time stamp appeared in the corner, 10:34 a.m. There was Preston, stepping toward Isaiah near the wet floor, asking why he was there as if safety were an inconvenience. Then came the second clip, Preston sliding the wet floor sign away with his shoe. The third, Preston tipping coffee onto the marble. No one spoke when the dark spill spread across the floor on the screen. Stephanie's jaw tightened. The human resources officer typed a note into her tablet. Preston tried to speak, but Maya lifted one hand. Let the record run. Daniel played the next clip. Preston demanded Isaiah's badge. Preston told him he did not belong near the front of the building. Preston threatened his assignment. Preston told Victor over the radio that cleaning staff should be removed from showroom-facing areas. Preston recorded himself describing Isaiah as unauthorized. Then the clip showed him standing in front of the conference hallway, blocking the path, making a phone call after Victor had already told him Isaiah was not trespassing. The room did not need Isaiah to explain the injustice. It watched Preston build it with his own hands. When the monitor went dark, Stephanie turned to Preston with the controlled voice of someone protecting a company from a person who had become a liability. Effective immediately, you are suspended from all duties with Vale Premier Motors pending corporate investigation. Preston blinked. Stephanie, this is insane. Your building access badge is being deactivated now. The human resources officer looked at Daniel. Please remove Mr. Vale's dealership management access from the lobby, sales office, client lounge, and vehicle delivery area. Daniel entered the command at the security desk. A small confirmation beep sounded. It was not dramatic, but to Preston, it landed harder than shouting. The badge clipped to his belt, the little piece of plastic that had let him move through the showroom like a king, had become useless in 1 second. Stephanie continued, your current commissions, including the Caldwell delivery and all pending high-value accounts from this week, will be held until review determines whether any client interactions were affected by misconduct. Preston's mouth opened. You cannot hold my commissions over coffee. Maya's voice stayed calm. No one is reviewing you over coffee. You are being reviewed for documented harassment of building personnel, interference with common area safety, attempted unauthorized seizure of a credential, obstruction of a legal closing area, possible retaliation against workers, and a reckless access complaint after building management contradicted you. Eleanor added, the new ownership will also be reviewing tenant compliance under the lease conduct clause. Preston looked at Isaiah then, desperate enough to finally address him with the title he had refused to imagine. Mr. Brooks, I think we started off wrong. Isaiah studied him. No. You started honestly. The sentence left Preston with nowhere to hide. Clara stepped forward next, holding the folder of printed emails against her chest. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not break. These are messages from Mr. Vale over the last 6 months. They reference cleaning staff, couriers, security presence, lobby visibility, and instructions to keep certain workers away from clients. She handed the folder to Maya, then to Stephanie for review. I should have reported them sooner. Isaiah looked at her, not as a boss rewarding loyalty, but as a man recognizing courage. You reported them today. Mr. Howard Bell stood from the bench and gave Eleanor a written statement about the day Preston had treated him like a stranger in a building where he had rented office space for 12 years. The young customer sent the original phone video to Daniel's secure address and gave his contact information. Mr. Caldwell, who had returned quietly after watching part of the scene from outside, approached Stephanie and said he no longer wished to complete the vehicle delivery that day if Preston was involved in any way. Mrs. Caldwell added, the janitor was the only person in the lobby acting professionally. Preston flinched at the word janitor now, not because he respected the work, but because it had become the mirror he could not escape. Stephanie turned to her human resources officer. Document customer concern and remove Mr. Vale from all client-facing accounts pending review. Then she looked at Preston. You will leave the premises after collecting personal items under supervision. You are not to contact employees, witnesses, contractors, tenants, or Mr. Brooks directly. Any communication will go through corporate counsel. Preston's face twisted with disbelief. So I am just supposed to walk out of my own showroom? Isaiah said, it was never your showroom. It was leased space in someone else's building. That was the final correction Preston had avoided all morning. He had confused access with ownership, rent with authority, fear with respect. Now every borrowed piece of power was being taken back in order. Daniel printed the access deactivation report and placed it into the incident folder. Victor Lang signed an acknowledgement that building management had warned Preston not to call in a trespass complaint. Maya attached the lease clauses to the review packet: harassment of building personnel, conduct damaging property reputation, retaliation, and interference with ownership transition. Eleanor issued a written preservation notice to Vale Premier Motors corporate office, requiring all internal messages, security interactions, employee complaints, and client communications related to Preston's conduct to be retained. Stephanie accepted it without argument because the footage had made denial expensive. Preston tried one last time to control the story. You people are making this about race and class because it is convenient, he said. I was protecting standards. Isaiah's eyes did not harden. They settled. A standard that requires disrespect is not a standard. It is a disguise. No one rushed to fill the silence after that. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. The dealership staff who had watched Preston's behavior for years heard something in them they had been waiting to hear from someone with the power to say it without losing a paycheck. Stephanie ordered Preston to hand over his dealership keys, demo vehicle access card, and office tablet. He removed each item slowly, placing them on the reception counter where Isaiah had stood invisible to him less than 3 hours earlier. The keys made a small metallic sound when they touched the stone. Preston looked at them as if they had betrayed him. Daniel and the corporate human resources officer escorted him to his glass office to collect only personal belongings. He walked past the midnight blue coupe without touching it, past the coffee counter where the spill had begun, past the wet floor sign still standing where Isaiah had placed it. The sales team watched in silence, not with cruelty, but with the stunned expression of people seeing a rule change in real time. When Preston reached the glass doors, his deactivated badge failed at the side exit. A red light blinked. Daniel opened the door manually and logged the escorted departure. Preston stepped out into the wet Baltimore afternoon without his badge, without his appointments, without his commission secured, without the false kingdom he had mistaken for power. Inside, the consequences continued. Isaiah did not fire every dealership employee. He did not order the showroom emptied in a fit of anger. He asked for facts. Stephanie agreed to place an interim manager over the dealership floor by close of business. Corporate legal would review Preston's prior client accounts and employee complaints. Victor's handling of earlier concerns would be reviewed by the new ownership. Clara received written protection from retaliation before she returned to the reception desk. Daniel's incident file became the official building record. Mr. Bell's complaint was reopened. The Caldwells were offered the choice to complete their purchase later with a different representative or walk away without penalty. The cleaning vendor received a notice from Isaiah's office clarifying that no tenant had authority to restrict workers from common areas when they were addressing safety, maintenance, or building operations. Then Isaiah did something Preston would never have understood. He asked the cleaning crew supervisor to come to the lobby. When she arrived, nervous and expecting blame, Isaiah shook her hand and apologized for the conditions her team had been forced to navigate. That changes today, he said. He instructed Maya to prepare a temporary amendment protecting cleaning staff access through safe, appropriate routes without hiding them from public spaces as if their work were shameful. He told Victor to remove any memo that treated workers as visual problems instead of building personnel. He asked Daniel to recommend updated camera coverage for the lobby blind spots. He asked Clara to collect anonymous staff concerns for a full tenant culture review. Every order was specific. Every correction had a place to land. That was why it felt like justice instead of revenge. Isaiah had been insulted personally, but he answered structurally. He did not want one man embarrassed for a day while the building stayed sick. He wanted the sickness named, documented, and removed. By 2:15, the lobby had changed. The floor was clean. The coffee stain was gone. The yellow sign was back on the cart. The dealership lights still shined over the cars, but the room no longer belonged to the loudest person in it. Clara sat straighter behind the desk. Daniel stood with the calm of a man whose professionalism had finally been backed by authority. Mr. Bell walked to the elevator without detouring around the showroom rope line. The young customer left his statement and thanked Isaiah quietly. Stephanie remained in the conference room with Maya and Eleanor, beginning the corporate review that Preston had never believed would reach him. Isaiah stood near the entrance for a moment, holding the new building keys in his palm. Maya came beside him. "You could have ended it earlier," she said softly. Isaiah looked at the lobby camera, then at the service hallway, then at the space where Preston had stood when he spilled the coffee. Earlier would have been my word against his habits. Now. Isaiah closed his hand around the keys. Now it is the building's record. He looked down at his gray uniform, at the faint mark on his shoe, at the mop cart that had helped him see the truth from the angle most owners never bothered to use. Preston had tried to take his dignity and had lost his authority instead. Isaiah had walked in unseen and walked out recognized, not because he demanded respect, but because the truth had finally been given enough room to stand. The change did not arrive as a speech. It arrived as a list, a schedule, a policy draft, and a set of doors that no longer quietly told workers to disappear. By 4:30 that afternoon, while the rain finally cleared over Baltimore, Isaiah Brooks sat in the conference room with Maya, Eleanor, Daniel, Clara, Victor, Stephanie Hale, the cleaning crew supervisor, and a representative from the dealership's corporate office. The signed ownership documents rested on the table, but Isaiah did not keep touching them. He had not bought the building so people would stare at paper. He had bought it to change what the paper allowed him to protect. The first new rule was simple: no tenant could restrict building workers, contractors, security staff, couriers, or visitors from lawful common areas based on appearance, uniform, job title, or presumed status. The second rule required all tenant complaints about workers to be submitted through building management in writing, with date, time, location, and specific conduct, not vague phrases like bad image or premium discomfort. The third rule created retaliation protection for any employee, tenant, contractor, or visitor who reported harassment or discrimination inside the property. Clara read the draft twice, as if she needed to see the words before believing they could apply to her. Daniel did not smile much, but his shoulders lowered for the first time all day. The cleaning supervisor. A woman named Renee Carter, who had been warned for years to keep her team invisible, placed both hands on the table and said, "My people just want to do their work without being treated like they are the mess." Isaiah looked at her and answered, "Then this building will stop confusing workers with problems." That sentence became the line Maya wrote at the top of the internal memo. Before evening, Daniel was officially offered the role of building operations supervisor, reporting directly to ownership instead of being trapped between tenant pressure and weak management. He would oversee security coordination, camera retention, incident logs, and access policy. Clara received written protection from retaliation and was asked to help design a confidential reporting process for front desk staff, contractors, and tenants. Mr. Howard Bell's earlier complaint was reopened, and by the end of the week, the dealership issued him a formal apology, not a polished marketing apology, but one tied to a documented staff retraining requirement. The Caldwells decided not to complete their vehicle delivery that day, and their written statement became part of the corporate review. Other people began speaking too. A courier sent an email about being made to wait outside in cold weather because his uniform did not match the showroom image. A night cleaner described being told to push trash bins through the loading dock during a storm so clients would not see her. A junior salesman admitted Preston had warned the team not to look too friendly with building staff because it made the brand feel ordinary. None of those stories alone would have changed the building. Together, they showed a pattern. Isaiah made sure the pattern had consequences. The dealership was placed under a 90-day tenant conduct probation. Corporate assigned an interim manager, required anti-harassment and workplace respect training for all showroom staff, and agreed that any further interference with building personnel would trigger a lease review. Victor Lang, the old building manager, was not publicly shamed, but his role changed. Isaiah told him privately that silence had become policy under his watch, and policy that protected disrespect could not remain. Victor accepted a reduced transition role while Daniel took operational authority. It was not revenge. It was accountability with a receipt. Over the next 2 weeks, the building started feeling different in ways visitors might not notice at first. The service hallway was repainted, not hidden. The freight elevator was repaired. The camera that had dropped frames was replaced. The old memo about avoiding peak showroom hours was removed from the bulletin board and replaced with a clear notice: all workers and visitors will be treated with dignity in every common area. Cleaning staff were given updated badges with their full names spelled correctly. Couriers were allowed to wait inside during bad weather. Security officers were instructed not to enforce tenant preferences as if they were building rules. The lobby still shined. The cars still gleamed behind glass. The marble still reflected the ceiling lights. But now, when Renee's team crossed the lobby with supplies, no one looked at them like they had entered the wrong room. Clara began greeting them by name. Daniel checked in without making it feel like surveillance. Mr. Bell walked through the front entrance without detouring around the showroom ropes. Even the younger salespeople seemed relieved, as if Preston's absence had removed a sound they had forgotten was noise. Isaiah did not pretend the building was healed in a day. He knew policies could be printed faster than people could unlearn fear. So he scheduled monthly tenant meetings, anonymous reporting reviews, and quarterly audits of access complaints. Maya told him that was more structure than most office buildings twice the size. Isaiah said structure was what people needed when decency had been optional for too long. One afternoon, Clara stopped him near the front desk and said, "I used to think keeping my head down was the same as being professional." Isaiah looked at the lobby, where Daniel was helping a delivery driver find the elevator and Renee's crew was moving safely through the front path. "Sometimes keeping your head down is how people survive," he said. "But when a place becomes safe enough, people should not have to survive it. They should be able to work in it." Clara nodded, and for once, she did not look toward the showroom before speaking. That was how Isaiah knew the change had begun to reach deeper than the documents. Preston had lost his badge, his authority, and his protection from consequences, but the real payoff was not one man walking out through the rain. The real payoff was every person who walked in after him and no longer had to wonder whether their uniform made them less human. 3 weeks after Isaiah Brooks signed the papers and changed the rules of 900 Harbor Avenue, he returned to the lobby just before sunset, not for a meeting, not for a legal review, and not because anyone had called him there to fix another problem. He came because a building has a different voice after the day is over. The showroom lights were still on, glowing softly over the cars behind glass, but the noise was gone. No sharp voice cut across the marble. No one rushed to move a worker out of sight. A courier sat near the reception area with a cup of coffee while waiting for a signature, dry and warm instead of standing outside in the weather. Renee Carter's cleaning crew moved through the lobby with supplies on a cart, talking quietly among themselves, not hiding, not hurrying like their presence was something to apologize for. Clara looked up from the front desk and smiled when Isaiah entered. "Good evening, Mr. Brooks." Isaiah nodded. Good evening, Clara. Daniel Price stood near the security station in his new operations supervisor jacket, reviewing camera angles on the monitor wall. Camera 7 no longer flickered. The hallway camera had been upgraded. The blind spot between the elevator vestibule and the showroom entrance was gone. Daniel looked over and lifted the new building master key ring with a small, satisfied smile. Everything is holding steady. Isaiah walked beside him and looked at the screens. Good. Steady is underrated. Daniel understood what he meant. So did Clara. So did everyone who had worked too long in places where peace depended on the mood of one loud person. Maya arrived a few minutes later, carrying no binder this time. Only her purse and a paper bag from the bakery down the block. She found her father near the service hallway, standing in front of the old bulletin board. The faded memos were gone. In their place were clean notices about worker dignity, visitor access, reporting procedures, camera retention, and tenant conduct. Maya leaned beside him and handed him the bag. You skipped lunch again. Isaiah looked inside and smiled. Apple turnover. And coffee. Not from the showroom. That made him laugh softly. The sound was quiet, but it filled something in the hallway that had once felt heavy. Together, they walked back toward the lobby. Near the entrance, Isaiah noticed a small scrap of paper on the marble, probably torn from a delivery label. Nobody else seemed to see it. He stopped, bent down, picked it up, and placed it in the nearest trash bin. Maya watched him with the same expression she had worn since childhood whenever her father did something simple that carried a lesson. You own the building now, she said. You know that, right? Isaiah looked at the floor, then at the glass doors, then at the workers crossing the lobby without fear. Owning it does not make me too important to care for it. Maya softened. Most people would have let someone else pick that up. I spent too many years being someone else, he said. He did not say it bitterly. That was the healing in it. There had been a time when the memory of those old dealership floors still cut him, when every polished car and every careless salesman reminded him of being young, unseen, and exhausted. But standing there now, with keys in his pocket and dignity still intact, Isaiah felt something different. Not revenge. Not triumph over one man. Release. Preston Vale no longer worked in the building. His name had been removed from the dealership office door, his accounts were under review, and the people he once made nervous no longer changed their posture when footsteps crossed the lobby. But Isaiah did not let Preston become the center of the ending. Men like that had already taken enough space. The story that mattered now belonged to Clara speaking without checking over her shoulder, Daniel protecting. Policy with authority behind him, Renee's crew entering through the front when the front was the safest route, Mr. Bell walking to the elevator like a tenant with every right to be there, and Maya seeing that her father had not let old pain turn him hard. As the last orange light of evening spread across the glass walls, Isaiah stepped outside with Maya and looked up at the building name being removed from the stone above the entrance. A crew would install the new sign by morning. For now, there was only a clean space waiting. Maya asked, "What do you want people to feel when they walk in?" Isaiah thought for a moment. Behind them, the lobby doors opened for a cleaner leaving work, and Daniel called, "Have a good night, Renee." Renee answered with a laugh that did not sound guarded anymore. Isaiah smiled. "I want them to feel like they do not have to shrink." Maya looked at him, proud and quiet. Isaiah held the door open for an older tenant entering from the sidewalk, then stepped aside with the same humility he had carried in a gray uniform, in a service hallway, and now as the owner of the ground beneath everyone's feet. The marble still shined. The cars still gleamed. The building still looked expensive. But for the first time in years, its worth was not measured by what it displayed behind glass. It was measured by the people who could finally walk through the front door with their heads up.